Our next speaker will be Daniel Hayes. He is also a researcher at BOKU University in Vienna, and he will give us an overview on the research priorities in hydropeaking. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. I'm very happy to be presenting here almost at the end of the conference, and I want to talk about kind of like the heart issue of what we've been talking about these last days. Sustainability in hydropeaking, in hydropower, specifically I want to talk about hydropeaking in a forward-looking way. What are the next steps? And so our talk, Research Priorities in Hydropeaking, I'm standing here on behalf of a huge authorship team where without them and many other people, as you will see, this research would not have been possible. So to start with this video, basically we have talked a lot about the need for flexibility. And we have seen the rise of renewables and basically how flexible hydropower is necessary to fill these dunkelflaute areas and other aspects. Take the volume of it here. Thank you. So this is how it looks at the outlet of a hydropeaking power plant in Austria, basically when the up-ramping starts. In the river then, this turn on and off of the turbine is translated into changes of the wetted width. So we see here the up-ramping phase, the peak phase, and finally at the end when the turbines are turned off again, we have this dewatering phase, the return to base flows. And from an ecological perspective, there are different ecological consequences. One of them that we've talked a lot about yesterday is the fish stranding. So as you see here, the grayling larvae being stranded in the puddles and really struggling to survive. And then it's just a matter of time till all of the water is gone and they might even die. So we're in here between flexible hydropower, ecological aspects. We can add social aspects as well. So the main question that I had, and probably all of us have, is okay, how can we improve the sustainability of peaking hydropower? And a follow-up question was then, okay, so what are actually the most pressing questions? What questions do we need to address in the future to answer the first question? So that's when I discovered a paper in fisheries research where a team of authors got together and they summarized, and they basically had summarized 100 research questions in the term of fishery research. And I was getting into the topic. I saw, okay, there's actually a main paper from the UK, from Sutherland and colleagues, where they discovered or assessed research needs in the UK from an ecological perspective. And basically, since then, there were quite a series of papers that have been developed with a similar methodology in ecology more general. We have topics in agriculture and in other topics. Here they come. Landscape restoration, the forestry sector. We have fish migration, and we have fish physiology, just to give you a few examples. So I thought, okay, this would be fantastic to do in the hydropeaking sector, but I'm an ecologist and I can cover that aspect, but as shown here in this graphic, it's so diverse and we need all these multiple disciplines on board, as shown here. And that's when the hydropeaking network came into play that Markus introduced in the SPEED presentations the other day, which is this transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary research network on hydropeaking. So we got together then with the aim to identify 100 high-priority, policy-relevant questions in the hydropeaking research and management field. And the way we went about it, we had 3 key steps in the process. So basically, the step number 1, we had a global survey aimed at soliciting research questions. In step number 2, then we had an expert rating of these questions. And in step number 3, finally, we identified this list of high-priority questions. So starting with the first one, the global survey. So we did this survey in 6 main well-spoken languages across the globe to really catch as many stakeholders as possible and get their input. The survey was distributed widely. Here is showing you one example from Twitter. So we used social media, we used email contacts from conferences, different networks, just to spread the survey. We had a quite good response. So we had over thousands of clicks on the survey with a quite good rate actually of full survey completion in the end. And essentially, this is kind of what it looked like. So we asked, what are the unanswered questions in the field of hydropeaking? And the people could answer according to their expertise. For example, a hydrologist then might put a few questions in there. And then in the end, we listed these questions. So we had 220 stakeholders who completed this survey. And these 220 stakeholders gave us 430 unique questions after filtering out a lot of redundant questions as well, because many people did have the same questions. And then we took those 432 questions and we went to the expert rating. So we invited all of these 200 experts to follow up with us. Of these, we had a handful then that joined, and the experts, according to the expertise, they got basically the full list of questions, and they were asked for each question 3 main questions. On the one hand, what is the knowledge gain? Always rating it on a scale from 1 to 10. Is it high or low? Have there been past studies on this question already? Because if there are a lot of past studies on that question, maybe it's not so important pressing one anymore. And then thirdly, we ask, what is the feasibility? In terms of, is that question a question that you can actually take a scientific study design and answer it in a realistic manner? And so we summarized and put all of that together. So we created an average ranking of all the experts of the categories. And in the end, that yielded us from the top to bottom. We started with the number 1 question and then went down till we reached 100 questions from 8 topical areas. And the 8 topical areas are number 1. So we have questions regarding hydrology. We have questions regarding physiochemical properties of water, questions regarding river morphology and sediment dynamics. We have questions related to ecology and biology, questions related to socioeconomic topics, energy markets, policy and regulation, and lastly, management and mitigation measures. And I don't want to bore you now with the whole list of 100 questions, but I want to just give you a handful of one example for each category. So for example, in hydrology, one of the questions that popped up is, how does the temporal resolution of stream flow or river stage data for that matter affect assessments of hydropeaking hydrology? So just looking at these scales, we know there are different ways to characterize the hydrology, but what is the effect of the temporal resolution? Regarding physiochemical properties, we have a question that is associated with eutrophic reservoirs, for example. Say, okay, how does hydropeaking affect the water quality downstream of river sections when released from eutrophic reservoirs? Regarding river morphology and sediment dynamics, an example is, how does hydropeaking affect the riverbed composition in terms of fine sediment content, sorting processes, and particle size distribution? In ecology and biology, an example question is, how does hydropeaking affect riparian and gravel bar invertebrate communities? Socioeconomic topics, it's a question related to the role of different stakeholders and institutions in developing decision-making with regards to hydropeaking. And energy market, a question in the sense that we touched a lot. To what degree does grid stability and production flexibility differ in countries that rely on hydropeaking? And in the policy sector, an example is, how can hydropeaking mitigation be more consistently integrated in environmental flows policy? And my last example question for today is, what are the most effective nature-based mitigation measures, for example, habitat structures, bed forms, natural ponds for hydropeaking? So you're welcome to download all 100 questions. So we have a preprint paper on a server, so you can access that QR code. And the question is, okay, that's nice, we have 100 questions now, but how can we actually use these questions? And it's in the sense there are 3 different key audiences for these questions shown here. On the one hand, obviously researchers could use these questions, but also research funders, and lastly, policymakers and practitioners. And I think with this list, I'm probably, or hopefully touching everyone in this room in some way or the other. And I quickly want to highlight these 3 main target audiences for this research work. So firstly, the researchers. It's probably the most quite obvious. Researchers ask questions and they want to answer questions. And so this could be a fantastic baseline to just to have an idea, okay, in what direction can I develop my research? And especially also for young researchers starting their PhD, sometimes we toss them into the water and say, develop a question, but they don't know necessarily the literature yet and from which we derive the questions. And so this could be an excellent also guiding block for young people, but also for older people, just to set some research priorities. Secondly, we have research funders. So research funders might be interested in which broad topics they could support, and in this way, basically help progress sustainable hydropeaking. And lastly, we have policymakers and practitioners, and basically these people you can benefit from the answers to the question, implementing them, closely working with scientists, funders, and so on. So I want to encourage all of you, no matter what group you are in, we all are here to work towards sustainability, and we all want to make a difference in this world. We want to work towards a better future from all aspects. So I kind of encourage you to go forward, to take also our list and basically improve hydropower to make it more sustainable. So with that, I'm at the end of my talk, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I basically want to summarize that we had this aim of basically identifying these key questions, and we had extensive stakeholder processes with different people. So this was a whole 2-year process to get to this work, and I really hope it'll have an impact. And if some of you are using these questions, writing proposals, papers, I'd be happy if you let me know and see where it goes. So thank you very much.